Well, welcome everybody. This is Fred Kaiser. Welcome to episode 6 in the series of Friday Night Lights sessions. This evening is entitled 6 Steps to Initiation, a primer. It is a webinar that should last about 30 minutes, and we are recording the session so that it can be viewed by others who don't get a chance to join us, and they can see it on the Michigan Masons channel on YouTube. Now, all participants, by virtue of just the setup, all participants are muted and their video is turned off to maximize the bandwidth here and so forth, also to keep down background noise. So Corey Curtis will be monitoring both the chat and Q&A functions, which you'll find, or should find at least, at the bottom of your screen. So if you have questions, please feel free to post them. He'll try to handle them throughout the course of the webinar or relay them to Bob for answering. We'll also be sending a follow-up questionnaire to each of you following the session, and I'll put it in the chat window a little later, or Corey will, I should say, and we'll take a few minutes. Please take a few minutes to complete it either tonight or when it is sent to you so we can get your feedback and make these sessions hopefully even better. I've also posted in the chat function there for follow-up questions or assistance. Please feel free, if you think of a question you didn't think of yet during the course of this, go ahead and send it on to Outreach and Member Care at the email and toll-free number that you see reflected in your chat box. So I'd like to introduce somebody to whom you probably need no introduction, but our System CEO, Most Worshipful Brother Robert Conley, who will take us through 6 steps to initiation of primer. Thanks, Bob. Take her over.
Thanks, Fred. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here and have those of you with us that are there. Tonight we're just going to kind of briefly go through the 6 steps to initiation process. This program was created in relationship to a need that we identified some years ago as a consequence of an action that happened many years ago. So back in the day, and there's a few of us that still remember, there was what has come to be known as the long form proficiency, but it was the proficiency for years, decades actually. And it was a rather lengthy piece of work. In the process of learning that, something happened between a candidate and then an initiate and a fellow craft and so on and so forth, that kept them then. There was a mentoring kind of a relationship building that took place kind of synergistically because of this teaching that was going on between the prompter and the candidate and then initiate and fellow craft and so forth. And Bill Skrepnick at a point in time when he was Grandmaster realized one fact, and the fact was that at that time, about 15% of those who were initiated and entered apprentice actually concluded as a Master Mason. Bill, believing that the reason for that, or at least one of the reasons for that, was this lengthy, laborious catechism process, changed it then to what you and I know today as the standard kind of proficiency that we have to do. The unintended consequence of that, I won't debate the merits of changing that or not changing it, that gets debated enough on enough forums. But the unintended consequence that Bill faced when that happened was that bond between the teacher or the mentor and the student or the initiate or the mentee or whatever you want to call them didn't have a chance to really happen and take place. And so we cleaned up that 15%. It went, today it's as high as 85% of those that are initiated actually end up completing the Master Mason degree and becoming a member of the lodge. However, what did happen was that we then saw an increase in suspensions for non-payment of dues. And the reason for that was, we instead of cleaning them out through the learning of the ritual process, you now found that they came into the fraternity because it was a little easier for them to memorize what we have to memorize. But that the connection between them and another Mason was lost. And so you and I both know how important it is that relationships be built between a person coming into the fraternity and the members of that lodge. And we've always said, if he has at least one friend in that lodge, the likelihood of him leaving that lodge for suspension for non-payment of dues is greatly reduced. How much is that reduced? That I don't know, but I know that it's reduced. So the 6 steps to initiation was to do 2 things. Number 1, it was to make sure that everybody knew, the initiate and the lodge, that this was an action that he wanted to take and participate in. And then also that relationship between a mentor and the initiate would take place earlier than what it normally would for somebody just petitioning a lodge and coming into the lodge. All right. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we'll kind of walk through this PowerPoint. This was presentations that we did at the Warden's trainings and renewal programs for a long time. I'm going to briefly go through it. Fred, you need to keep an eye on my time and shoot me a text or something if I start to get too close and go over. But we're just going to walk through this, and as we go, then I'll also identify some places where you can find some of these resources. Go to the website, log in, get into the member section of the website. Go to the search function. It's the easiest way to find it. Just type in 6 steps, and the folder will pop up, and then all these materials. Some of them are in there already, but we'll also have the PDF of this presentation in there as well after this program. All right, here we go. Okay. Okay, so you should be seeing a big sign that shows us. I'm going to move my Q&A over so I don't miss any if you do have a question. That shows the steps of the process. So step 1, and again, inside of the 6 steps to initiation process, everything is pretty much laid out. How you use that, I don't, this is for your use, and you have to make determinations on how this all works out. All right. But step 1 is the initial contact. Step 2 is to begin to establish expectations. Then step 3 is begin building a relationship. And you continue to educate the prospect. Step 4 is expanding their circle. Continue developing relationships in the lodge. Step 5 is education, acceptance, and encouragement. And then step 6 is to petition and the continuing of mentoring program and education.
Bob?
Yeah.
Bob, sorry to interrupt, but right now we have just a black screen for some reason.
Oh.
Popped up there,
Right.
went
Right,
to a black screen. Okay.
Hang on. Let me go back. We'll have to use the other screen the way that it is then. All right. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's the 6, and we'll just use this. We'll go with this. All right. So I'll just go back through the first one starts at initial contact, and then we move through those steps to the petition. All right. Let me I gotta move some stuff. All right. So step 1 then is to contact the prospect. Seems kind of easy. Remember, these prospects are not necessarily those that are like family members or that. These are usually people that have contacted us through the internet, maybe through our website, through the new beafreemasonnow.com website that the Scottish Rite jurisdictions in the Shrine are presenting. We saw some huge impact from that when that first started. That prospect has no prior kind of knowledge or information about the local lodge. So this is where you have that ability. Phone is best in this case. Email is acceptable if phone isn't available. And then you ask the question, does the prospect wish to meet? A lot of times these kinds of contacts to us are simply curiosities, and they're looking for some information and that kind of thing. And this is a place where you start to kind of weed that stuff out. Is the prospect serious about a life in Freemasonry? It's an interesting question because I don't know how many of us actually think about that. And the question would lead them to a little further thought about actually what they're doing. And then was you ask the prospect to bring some questions with them to your first meeting. All right. Step 2 is this is actually when you're getting together. So this is the first time that you'll actually meet them, and this is done at the lodge, and it's done with people present. All right, so don't do it by yourself. Have some other folks around, or at least, it might be a fellowship evening. It might be you're having a dinner kind of program or something like that. In today's day and age, with our current COVID situation, it could very easily be a Zoom web meeting kind of introduction to him, and you could actually do a very, very easily done walkthrough of your lodge building and that kind of thing. But discuss with him his reasons for interest in the fraternity. Did he bring some questions with him? And then ask him, after you talk about those questions, were your answers satisfactory? And if they're not, the easiest thing to do is to say, if you don't know the answer to a question, for heaven's sakes, just say we'll work on that together, and we'll both learn something. And then discuss the traditional approach. The traditional approach, and as you can see, I've shifted slides here a little bit. If I can find. Okay, so the traditional approach is really a document that simply states that as an individual seeking further information in the possible life of Freemasonry, it goes through these questions and answers, and it just gives you a place to talk. I don't recommend that we use this as a pass-fail kind of program. This is, these questions are opportunities for dialogue and conversation. Again, you're building a relationship with the individual. The intention is to begin this to make sure that they're thinking about Freemasonry in a different context than one of simply another service club or something like that. But when you download this from the website, this document really is an excellent place for a conversation. And I would use it in your lodge too, as an education evening. If you have some program that you don't know what to do, but you want to have something for your fraternal education programs, this is a great place to start. So these are some very important points that you should know about Freemasonry. So Freemasonry is not for everyone, and we need to find out if it's suitable for you. This is done in your best interest, for if you are not suited, we would rather find out before you have spent your valuable time and money rather than after. And these points are a first step in helping us do that. So if you're interested in Freemasonry, is it also an attempt to tap into a large membership base for the purpose of furthering your career? It probably won't work. Do you understand this important point? And then again, you're kind of moving through these questions and answers. And again, this is that traditional approach that we talk about. Becoming Freemason is not an event. It doesn't just happen. It's not something that you decide to do on Monday and it's done next week. Rather, it's a process. It takes time, mental and physical, costs money. And this is this first place where you start talking about money. So many of our lodges are absolutely terrified to talk to people about money. And yet money is the first and most primary issue in our world. With it, things are possible. Without it, things are not. So talk to them about money. Most of your dues, by the way, are so ridiculously low that that discussion is probably almost going to be comical. If your dues were $1,000 a year, might be different, but it does cost money. Freemasonry is a lifetime commitment, and most Freemasons remain active until death. As I've always said, especially secretaries. And then, are you prepared to make such a long-term commitment? Again, this isn't something, Freemasonry isn't one of these where it's just you send into AAA and get a dues card and you're now a member of AAA. We want them to understand what this process is. But what a great conversation starter when somebody would say, well, I don't really understand that lifetime commitment. And then you bring in somebody who might be one of our more senior members in your lodge and have them talk to that new person about his experiences as a Mason over decades of membership. I think it could be a lot of fun. As a Freemason, it would be required that you attend the lodge regularly. Again, you're putting these expectations in there, these expectations of involvement and performance, and that it's a long-term kind of thing. Now, of all of these things, these questions then get people thinking. And the thought may not be, where's my slide? And the slide may not necessarily, or the outcomes may not necessarily be what you think they will be. He may very well say at some point in this process that, this just isn't for me. Now, we would look at that and say, that's terrible. And I would look at that and say, that's a good thing. Because again, you did what you're supposed to do, which is educate a person, you built a relationship with them. They trust in saying, I just don't think that that's for me. And then maybe in the future, they might come back to our doors, but at least in the meantime, they're going to have a positive experience. And that positive experience will generate positive impact with them as you go forward. All right. So then in that pamphlet that I just showed you, or in that workbook that I just showed you, there are questions and answers. There's page 7, 8, 9, and then you would provide them with the address to the brethren, and that's in, I believe, the support material. So this packet is also inside of the website, and you can download that. And if you have any problems with that, just shoot us a note. Fred, Corey, myself, and Rob LaFleur will all have these copies at the end of this, and we can send you a note, or all of these as we go forward. All right. So all of these documents that are mentioned in the PowerPoint are also available here. Okay, and then you set the next appointment. So this is your step 2, is kind of a misnomer. It's actually your first physical meeting with this individual in your lodge. And now you're going to set the time when you get together next time. So then step 3 is, you're going to ask them, did you read the address to the brethren? The address to the brethren came to us from British Columbia. It came to them they stole it from Washington State, who stole it from California. So Masons love to steal good work. And that address to the brethren will sound very familiar to all of you who have ever been to a Masonic installation of officers in December or whatever. So, but ask them, take that home with them and allow them to read that and share it with their spouse and make sure that they understand it. Then ask them, does it resonate with you? Then you go through the lodge stations and places, that we have degrees and these kinds of things. Explain a typical lodge meeting. If you have a refreshment, kind of a structured refreshment program, some lodges do. They might have a festive board or a table lodge or something. You can explain those kinds of programs. Talk to them about dress code. If your lodge has a dress code, maybe summer is polo shirts and dockers or whatever it might be, but in the winter, it's officers are to be at a degree in tuxedos, and you are supposed to come in a coat and tie. Tell them that. Don't leave it to chance. I can't tell you how many men I've met over the years that were absolutely embarrassed and humiliated because they arrived at a lodge meeting inappropriately dressed, and had they only been made aware, they would have been more than happy to put a suit on. And it also gives you the opportunity to reinforce with them that this is not just joining the Barnes and Noble book club. Okay, and then that I was working with, his item for discussion at our next meeting was that he was a Catholic, and his priest objected to him coming into the lodge. So that was our conversation. He did subsequently join, and I also did have an interesting conversation with the priest during that time, although the priest was no less convinced about the correctness of my position. But having said that, we did get through that. Normally in this slide, I would put together a little graphic for you about building a prospect circle, but I want you to think about the members of your lodge as being inside of a circle. But if we stay active in the lodge, it's because within that circle, within those members of your lodge, you've also got connections with other members in that lodge, and there's a circle within a circle. And even if it's just one person, that circle now has value and power. You work through the process of Freemasonry together with somebody else. The best experiences of my life have been working through Freemasonry with friends and brothers. Some of who are gone now, others who are younger, and we're just starting that process. But if they don't have that, if they don't have a friend within that lodge, if they don't have a relationship with somebody else in that lodge, the likelihood of them leaving for non-payment of dues is really much higher than it would be otherwise. Step 4, then you come back from this step 3, did the prospect select the topic of interest, and then have that conversation with them. Invite at least one more member to this meeting. So this is where they start to expand this relationship that you have as a mentor with others inside the lodge, so that you get to start building that circle a little bit further. You know, maybe the guy likes to ride motorcycles and you got some buddies in your lodge that are Harley fanatics, or maybe they like to fish, and certainly you know, there are going to be other people in the lodge that like to fish or hunt or some other hobby, and whatever it is, and you start to pull those people together. It's going to have a big impact on their acceptance of our fraternity. Warm and friendly meeting, a little discussion of the craft, but certainly, you know, that's why you're there. So however that folds itself out is fine. Identify social functions that the lodge participates in. And by the way, if you don't have any to talk about, then you need to get some of those created. And I would really encourage you to reach out to the lodge success team, and they can help you put ideas and things together. Special emphasis on family events and spouse invited at the very least. So this is step 4. Step 5 is another social event, and you know, and by that I simply mean they can't come to a degree because they haven't even petitioned the lodge yet, but they can come to, you know, you might be having dinner before a meeting, or you might be having coffee and cake after a meeting or something like that. And they can be invited to that. Prospect and his spouse, if that's how you do that, should be made to feel welcome and comfortable. There's nothing better, it seems to me, than introducing, if they are a couple, to other couples within the lodge. And I can think of dozens of lodges off the top of my head where the ladies are invited to dinner. The men after that go upstairs and conduct their business while the ladies have some kind of function downstairs in the dining hall or whatever it might be. And this is a good opportunity for the lady of your prospect to start building relationships of her own with those folks. Talk about the youth groups, talk about Eastern Star at this point as well. Okay, and let them know that we're a great group for a husband, a father, etc., to belong to. Don't underestimate that, and really talk about that. It's a good issue to do. Then step 6 is, quite frankly, the petition. Have they enjoyed the social functions of the lodge? And then describe to him the next steps, which are that after the petition comes back with the fee, it's read, it's referred to an examination committee, and it's returned to lodge. Describe the balloting procedure. Unanimous ballot must be cast, and don't let that freak them out, because every one of us had a unanimous ballot cast on our behalf. That's a powerful thing, that all of those people inside that lodge, even the ones that have never met him, are taking the word of those that have, that he'll be a good member of the lodge, and they've cast that ballot. So I think that that's a real powerful thing, that the unanimous ballot is a powerful addition for our fraternity. And then explain that the mentor will continue to assist the prospect as he progresses in the fraternity, although he is not necessarily the person that will do the catechism instruction to the new member. Okay, so there are a couple of places where there's some danger in all of this, and communication is the key to building relationships and member retention. If you as a mentor or whoever in your lodge assumes these responsibilities does not communicate with that individual on a timely, consistent basis, I can guarantee you they will lose interest and drift off. It's just that simple. So you have to develop a process by which you communicate with your membership. To communicate with your prospects is absolutely vital to their involvement and retention. All right, so don't let that slip through the cracks if you're going to be a part of this. So the final destination is basically this: an educated Mason in a vibrant lodge plus friends and brothers equals a Mason that stays. That's just basically it. If you have more questions, there's my contact stuff, and feel free to send me a note. I know that Fred and Corey will also have their information available for you there. Thank you, and that concludes that part of it. Let me stop my sharing, and we'll go back and see what's out there. Okay, So there's a lot of chat stuff out there, isn't there? Oh, I have a black screen, sorry.
Rob is going to
Okay.
post these on the website as you indicated, and including the PDF of the presentation. So
Yeah, those two kind of PDF of Word documents, they're both there because that's where I downloaded them from, so they are there. The PDF is not of the slides. Okay.
I don't see any questions right now, Bob, in the chat session, but we'll give folks a minute or two in case they do have them, if you've got a couple minutes more with us.
Sure.
All right. I don't see anything further in the chat window. So folks, as Corey has put in the window there is a follow-up questionnaire we'd appreciate you taking. Either you can copy and paste the URL from your chat window, or we'll send you the URL in a follow-up message to the folks that attended. Bob, there is one question here from Bruce Caswell about how many members can one member mentor?
You know, it's basically whatever you can handle. You know, I don't have any set number in mind. Some have had many. I don't know that that's necessarily a good idea. I kind of like to spread it around, but at the same time, some lodges just don't have a lot of mentor people that they can call on. But I would leave that up to you. You know, I think an ideal, at one time I had 3, and that was a lot of work, but 3 was a good number. I think 2 or, you know, would probably be better. But I did have as many as 3 at one time. It's a good question, though.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, I'm not seeing any, Bob, so thank you for taking the time. Thanks, Joe Neal.
My pleasure.
And thanks everybody for taking the time to be here this evening. We hope this is helpful, and it will be posted on the YouTube channel for Michigan Masons beginning probably late Monday from what Rob has said. So thanks again for joining us tonight.